Family gatherings have never been easy for me. I've always been the quiet one, the one people overlook, the one they talk over. But that night, at my aunt's house, during what was supposed to be just a casual dinner, something happened that burned itself into my memory forever. The evening had started like all the others. Laughter, clinking glasses, my cousins bragging about their latest promotions, my uncle making the same tired jokes he always makes. I sat at the end of the table, listening more than speaking, trying not to let the small jabs bother me. They always had a way of making me feel like I didn't belong, like I wasn't good enough. And then it happened. My aunt, the matriarch of the family in her own mind, leaned back in her chair, glass of wine in hand, and looked straight at me. Her eyes narrowed, and with a smirk she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're nothing without us." The words cut through the room like a knife. For a moment silence fell. Even the clatter of forks and the hum of conversation stopped. My cousins looked down at their plates. My uncle coughed awkwardly. No one defended me. No one said a word. I felt my chest tighten, my face flush hot. It wasn't the first time she had said something cruel to me, but this was different. This wasn't just a jab. It was a declaration. In her mind, I owed everything to this family, and without them, I was worthless. 100 comebacks raced through my head. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my glass across the room. I wanted to finally, after all these years, tell her exactly what I thought of her. But instead, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't even a polite smile. It was the kind of smile that hides fire behind it. The kind that says, "You'll see." I pushed my plate slightly away, folded my hands in my lap, and let her think she had won. The conversation around the table slowly started up again, but the words kept echoing in my mind. "You're nothing without us." What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been working in silence for months. Late nights after my regular job, long weekends when everyone else was out having fun, I had been building something, a business, a dream, something that was entirely mine. I hadn't told anyone because I didn't want their judgment, their doubts, their mocking laughter. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And I had. That very week, my work had paid off in a way I never imagined possible. Numbers in my bank account that I had only dreamed of before. Opportunities opening like doors I never thought I'd walk through. Independence, real and solid. So when my aunt said those words, "You're nothing without us," I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself, because I knew something she didn't. In 2 days, she would find out the truth. And when she did, it wouldn't just shake her, it would silence her. That night, after dinner ended, I walked home alone. The December air was sharp against my skin, but I hardly felt it. My aunt's words were still ringing in my ears, but instead of breaking me, they fueled something inside me. I replayed the scene in my head, the way she smirked, the way everyone else just sat in silence, avoiding eye contact as if my humiliation was entertainment. I should have been crushed. Years ago, I probably would have been, but not this time. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark room, and there it was, the project I had been building for months, the business I had poured every ounce of energy into. Sales, transactions, notifications. My work had started as a small idea, a risk that most people would have laughed at. But now, it was alive, thriving. The numbers were climbing higher than ever before. It didn't even feel real. That evening alone, while I sat silently at that dinner table, my phone had buzzed twice with new payments. Hidden beneath the tablecloth, I had seen them but said nothing. My aunt had no idea that while she was busy calling me nothing, I was quietly becoming something far bigger than she could imagine. I leaned back in my chair and let the thought sink in. My entire life, my family had measured my worth by their standards. Who had the best job, the most expensive car, the loudest presence in the room. But they never measured character. They never measured resilience. And here I was, proof that I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their help. I had built something on my own, something that gave me freedom, something that made their words powerless. Still, I didn't plan on telling them that night. No, I wanted the truth to come out in its own way. Undeniable, unspinnable, undeniable facts they couldn't dismiss. And fate, as it turned out, handed me the perfect opportunity. 2 days later, while I was sipping coffee and scrolling through my emails, I received a message that made me pause. It wasn't just another notification. It was something bigger, official, the kind of thing that makes your heart skip a beat and your hands tremble as you read. It was the beginning of everything, and soon it would reach my aunt. For the next 2 days, I barely said a word to my aunt or the rest of the family. They thought my silence meant they had won, that I had finally accepted my place beneath them. But the truth was, I was more focused than ever. At night, lying in bed, I kept hearing her words echo in my head. "You're nothing without us." The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how wrong she was. I had built my own path quietly, without their support, without their approval. And now I had something they didn't know about, something that was about to prove them all wrong. On the second evening, I sat at my desk with my laptop open. The glow of the screen lit up my room as I typed in a few passwords and opened accounts that no one in my family even knew existed. My chest tightened with both nerves and excitement. I could already imagine the look on my aunt's face when the truth came out. But here's the thing, I wasn't just planning revenge. No, this wasn't about petty payback. This was about showing her, and everyone else who had ever dismissed me, that I wasn't nothing. I was independent. I was capable. And most importantly, I had built something on my own that no one could take away. Still, I couldn't help but smile to myself as I pictured the phone call she'd be getting soon. She loved control, loved the feeling of being above me, loved reminding me of my place. She had no idea that by the time the phone rang, the ground she thought she stood on so firmly would start to crumble beneath her feet. The morning of the second day, I sent out one email. Just one. Simple, professional, but powerful enough to set everything in motion. By the time I closed my laptop, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the thrill of knowing what was coming. And 2 days later, when the phone finally rang, it wasn't me who had to answer. It was her. It was late afternoon when my aunt's phone buzzed on the table. She had been sipping tea with her friends, laughing, bragging as she always did, acting as though the world revolved around her. When she saw the caller ID, her bank, her expression barely changed. She answered with the same confidence she wore like a crown. "Hello? Yes, this is she." Her voice was sharp, clipped. She probably assumed it was some routine confirmation. But as the seconds ticked by, her face began to shift. The smugness drained, her forehead creased, her fingers tapped nervously against the porcelain cup. Her friends watched in silence as she muttered, "Excuse me? Can you repeat that?" The bank representative explained again, slowly, clearly. There had been a series of transactions linked to an account. My account. Money had been transferred, contracts finalized, assets registered. The amounts were significant, enough to demand notice, and my name was tied to all of it. That was when it hit her. Her teacup clattered against the saucer. She forced a smile in front of her friends, but her hand trembled so badly she had to set it down. The bank officer asked a simple question. "Do you have any relation to my name?" The silence on her end stretched thin. She swallowed hard, then mumbled, "Yes. She's my niece." And just like that, the power balance shifted. For years, she had paraded me as the family's failure, the one who would never succeed, who would always crawl back begging for help. Yet here she was, confronted by a stranger's voice on the phone, being told that the nothing she had dismissed was, in fact, building something far greater than she could comprehend. Her friends exchanged curious looks. They had heard her insults about me countless times. Now, watching her squirm, they wanted answers. She hung up the phone quickly, her smile stiff and unnatural. "Just some bank confusion," she muttered, but her shaking hands betrayed her. Inside, I knew she wasn't just shaken. She was terrified, because this was only the beginning. By the next morning, it wasn't just my aunt who knew. The whispers had already started. First, it was my cousin. She messaged me privately. "Did something happen with the bank? Aunt's acting weird. She was pacing all night." Then came the family group chat. My uncle dropped a vague message. "Who's messing with money transfers? It's causing problems." At first, nobody understood what he meant. But I did. And so did my aunt. She tried to get ahead of it. She posted a long, dramatic text about how outsiders were trying to interfere with the family's stability, how someone was pretending to be successful to shame them. Her words were filled with venom, and they all pointed straight at me. But her plan backfired. Instead of sympathy, people started asking questions. "Wait, why did the bank call you? Why is her name showing up on financial records tied to yours?" Every defensive word she typed only made her look guiltier. Screenshots of my registered business documents, contracts, and transfers started surfacing. Some relatives had already checked. Everything was in my name, legal, and clean. Her perfect image was cracking. I didn't even need to defend myself. I just sat back, watching the chat light up with question marks, accusations, and stunned silence. My aunt's control over the family narrative, the one she had used to belittle me for years, was slipping through her fingers. And then, the message appeared that shifted everything. "So, all this time you said she was a failure, but she's actually building something? Were you lying to us?" My aunt didn't respond. For the first time in years, she had no words. And I knew this was only the beginning of her unraveling. By the afternoon, the family chat was chaos. Half of my relatives were demanding explanations from my aunt. The other half were quietly messaging me, trying to piece together the truth. I didn't say much, just one simple reply. "I've worked for years while you believed her lies. Now the truth is out." That was all it took. The questions multiplied. People began connecting dots. Why my aunt always seemed to have sudden windfalls. Why certain relatives mysteriously never received money that was promised. Why she always insisted on handling finances on behalf of others. And then, my phone lit up. It was her. My aunt never called me directly. She always spoke about me, never to me. But this time, her name was flashing across my screen. I let it ring out the first time, just to make her sweat. When she called again, I answered. Her voice was nothing like the confident, cruel tone she used at family dinners. It was frantic, broken. "Listen, whatever you're doing, stop. Do you understand? You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. You think this makes you look good? You're just ruining everything." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. Then I calmly replied, "Funny. I thought I was nothing without you." She gasped audibly, like she realized she had walked straight into the trap she built herself. Before she could say anything else, I ended the call. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't her. It was my mother, then my uncle, then my cousin. Notifications stacked up one after another. The truth was spreading faster than she could control it. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the power. 2 days later, there was another family dinner. Normally, I would have skipped it, but this time, I went. When I walked in, all eyes turned to me. It wasn't the usual dismissive glances or mocking smirks. No, this time it was something different. Curiosity, suspicion, and for some, respect. My aunt sat at the head of the table, as always, trying to act like nothing had happened. She smiled too wide, spoke too fast, and laughed at jokes no one else made. But her hands betrayed her, tapping nervously against her wine glass, fidgeting with her napkin. Finally, my cousin broke the silence. "Auntie, is it true? Did you use her name for financial stuff?" The air froze. Forks hovered midair. Every head turned toward her. My aunt's face flushed. She stammered, "Don't be ridiculous. She doesn't even understand how these things work. I was just helping her." I didn't say a word. Instead, I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. With one swipe, I opened the bank notification I'd saved. Clear as day, it showed my name on documents tied directly to her accounts. Gasps spread around the table. My uncle's jaw dropped. My mother covered her mouth. My cousin whispered, "Oh my God!" My aunt slammed her hands on the table. "This is out of context! You don't know the full story," she snapped, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. But no one believed her anymore. The authority she once wielded over the family crumbled right there in front of me. Years of manipulation, lies, and condescension were unraveling, and I hadn't even raised my voice. I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected, and said just one sentence. The full story is finally out, and it isn't mine to be ashamed of. The room went silent. For the first time in years, my aunt had nothing left to say. The dinner ended in chaos. People whispered, exchanged nervous glances, and avoided looking at my aunt. For years, she had been the loudest voice in the room, the one who always had the last word. But now her power was slipping, and she knew it. As everyone started leaving, my cousin, the same one who had questioned her, walked up to me quietly. "I always thought you were exaggerating," she admitted, her voice low. "But, seeing it like this, I'm sorry." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had grown so used to being dismissed that hearing someone apologize felt unreal. I just nodded, and she gave me a quick hug before rushing out the door. But not everyone was sympathetic. My uncle muttered as he put on his coat, "You didn't have to humiliate her like that. Family matters should stay in the family." His words stung, but I noticed he couldn't even look me in the eye. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my aunt. At first, I thought it might be an apology. But when I opened it, I almost laughed. The text read, "Delete those documents. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone believes you forged them." She was doubling down, still trying to twist the story, still trying to scare me into silence. But this time, I wasn't scared. I typed a single reply and hit send. The truth doesn't need to be deleted. Sleep well. Minutes later, she started calling me, over and over. I didn't answer. For the first time in years, I felt like I finally held the power. By the next morning, my aunt's desperation had reached a breaking point. She had always been the one pulling strings in the family, but now she was tangled in her own web. At 7 a.m., my phone buzzed with a long string of voice messages from her. I didn't want to listen, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was frantic, almost unrecognizable. "You don't understand what you're doing. If this gets out any further, they'll all know about the—" She stopped suddenly, then cursed under her breath, realizing she had said too much. I froze. "The what?" The next recording continued, her voice shaking now. "Don't make me tell them everything about your father's savings account. Don't make me—" She trailed off again, clearly realizing she was digging herself deeper with every word. I replayed the message, my heart racing. My father's savings? What did she mean? Later that day, I forwarded the recordings to my cousin, the one who had started to believe me. Within minutes, she called back. "Do you realize what this means?" she whispered. "She's been hiding money, not just from you, from all of us." It was bigger than I thought. My aunt hadn't just been cruel with her words. She had been secretly controlling the family's finances for years, taking advantage of everyone's trust. And now, in her panic, she had practically confessed. That evening, I uploaded the recordings to the family group chat without a single caption. I didn't need to explain. The truth was loud enough on its own. For hours, the chat was silent. Then, one by one, the messages started. Shock, anger, betrayal, and finally, a single text from my uncle. It's over. When I woke up the next morning, my phone was still buzzing from notifications. Dozens of messages filled the family chat. Arguments, accusations, demands for explanations. But one thing was clear. No one was defending my aunt anymore. She tried, of course. She sent long, furious paragraphs about how I was twisting everything and turning people against her. But the recordings didn't lie. Her own voice had betrayed her. By afternoon, my uncle sent a final message. From this point on, you have no say in family matters. We're done. Then, one by one, people left the chat. It was strange. After years of being the one pushed aside, I was suddenly the one still standing while she crumbled. Later that evening, my cousin called me again. She's furious, she said, half laughing, half stunned. She's calling everyone, but no one's answering. It's like she doesn't exist anymore. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. For once, silence was enough. That night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, thinking about everything that had happened. My aunt had spent years trying to convince me I was nothing without her. But the truth was the opposite. Without me staying quiet all those years, she would never have been able to hold so much power. And now, with just one decision, pressing send, I had taken it all back. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not because my family finally saw the truth, but because I finally chose myself over their control. And that was something my aunt could never take away.